And so it started bending and bending until I decided it was a wise decision to cut it if I wasn't going to overlay it. A little too late because I ended up getting this tear on the side. So here we are. Everything, like my friend Fabi says, is a lesson learned. Hey there and welcome back, and if you are new here, welcome. My name is Paola of paolaponcenails.com, your source for all things premium soft gels and entrepreneurship in the nail industry. If this sounds like a niche you'd like to continue growing in, then at the end of this video, do consider subscribing to this channel and our weekly newsletter. Let's begin. Okay, so how are we going to fix it? This nail is very weak. So building a freeform extension is not wise because those rely on nails being strong and the nails being shorter. And yeah, I mean, I could try it, but it's going to stress the nail, a nail that is already stressed. I can also do one of my favorite extensions, which is a half tip extension, except we're going to run into the same problem. That half tip is going to be supported or going to have to be supported by the entire body of the nail. Likewise, the freeform extension, if we customize the free edge of this nail with a paper form, it also is going to need the support of the natural nail for strength. So again, we would not have the best support because there are tears and bends and a little bit of keratin missing from the nail. So I've learned over the years that the best way to fix an ugly nail like this, with this much damage, is to actually use a full coverage tip. And you probably are like, well, where have you been, Paola? Why don't you do that just off the gate, right out of the gate? And the reason being is because I actually don't love full coverage tips. I just don't feel like they are always as seamless and natural looking. But for something like this, it can work, and it will work because it's going to work as a brace, almost as if you would have broken your arm or even just fractured it or dislocated or whatever. Most of the times you're going to be put in a brace in order for there to be support, because that arm cannot deal with the day-to-day things and bumps, especially, right, without feeling pain or perhaps making the fracture or the injury worse. So again, this full coverage is going to work as a brace. And now that we have all of the surface area to hold the extension, that's going to provide better support than if I applied a tip here and I'm still asking this much of the natural nail to help out in that support. That's going to be the case for a freeform and a half tip. It can work. You or the client are going to have to baby the nail if you do that. But just putting a brace or a full coverage tip is actually going to support the nail. And I am thankful for full coverage tips existing because that is indeed the best option here. So let's start with adhering this. At this point, the natural nail is already prepped. So it's had its cuticle work. What it needs, however, is etching, a little bit of etching, a little texture there for adhesion. And also it's going to need spatial overlay and all of the jazz for a full coverage tip. So because this is an extension and this nail is particularly weak, I want to create texture on the nail so that there is a nice bond like this, right? The keratin layers are holding on to the tip, making a nice tight bond, not just overlaying each other. Whereas when I buff nails, where I typically buff nails to apply my overlay, just very gentle and leave the texture of the buffer on the nail plate, well, that bond ends up being more like this, kind of just right over the layers. And so the bond is more superficial. And right now we want a little bit more of a stronger bond, tight bond. Okay, so first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and etch this nail. The reason being that I want to etch it, so that just means create texture on the nail. Perhaps you're like, well, wouldn't that weaken the nail further because you're messing with the keratin, creating a type of damage on the nail plate? And the answer is no, not necessarily, because we're not going to remove keratin. We are just going to raise the keratin that is there to create some texture. And I'm going to do so simply with a 180 grit board file. So I'm going to find that coarse side of the file. And I'm also just going to go up and down until I create the texture that I want. and I'm thorough with this also. I already prepped the cuticle area, so I am just trying to get texture on the nail plate. Once I've created the texture, I'm going to remove that dust. And then you can see there that it's just texture. I'm going to then cleanse it with alcohol. And you always want to create texture for extensions because it's not the client's natural nail. And so it's often going to flex. And also your client might not be used to having that long length now. And so she will be bumping that nail more often than she needed to. So there's the texture as the alcohol dries. And then the other thing I do is take my towelette and wet it with 90% alcohol. Remember, when working with soft gels, we are always using 90% alcohol. Now, what I also like to do is to grab my tool, the scraper end of my pusher tool. This one is very sharp, so I'm going to double wrap it. And then just clean the cuticle area, because the cuticle area always presents a little bit of a problem when tucking or getting the gel close to that cuticle area. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to now apply gel. And if you're wondering what will I be using at this time, I'm going to be using the Kokoist Gelip Bond along with a Kokoist Gelip. So Gelip is the line of Kokoist full coverage tips. And I'm going to clean the back of it really well with alcohol. You can etch it. I find that that's not necessary in order for it to last. And then just have it ready, prepped and ready, and just make sure that it fits very well from sidewall to sidewall. A little bigger is a little better than a little small. Okay. So once you know it fits, just leave it on the side. And one last thing I recommend is that you roll that gel up a little bit to give it a natural C curve in there. That's going to make the gel up a little more narrow also. And that's important, especially at the cuticle area, because we don't want it to get too wide or you not being able to put the product there. Before we do that, you need to have your flash curing unit ready. Here I have this one that I got on Amazon, and I really like it because it's just a very slim torch. It has the wavelength of the 365 to 405 nanometers, which is good to cure a good range of gels. For me, however, this is just a flash curing lamp, so I'm only using this for a quick hold or nail art purposes. I'm always going to use a full power curing unit to properly cure my gels. It has two settings, a 20-second and a 60-second setting. And so I probably will want to do the 60-second when I'm ready to adhere. Very cool. It's also like magnetic, so it just sticks on there. You can put it on different sides of the stand there, depending on how you want it, or if you want to store it like so, that can work. I'm going to keep it as it's recommended when you are curing full coverage tips. Okay, I'm going to do a generous layer of Gelip Bond. Gelip Bond is a little thicker than Mega Stick Base, which is going to help with the ease of adhering the Gelip tip product on one side of the brush. Apply, get it close to the side walls, the perimeter of the nail, and then fully cure when you're ready. The nail is fully curing. Okay, here we are fully cured, and we went inside the full power curing unit, not on the flash curing unit. All right, so the next thing is usually the hardest, and that is to adhere the tip on yourself without applying it crooked. The way this works is you want to measure the natural nail and apply pretty much all of the gel that you're going to need on the tip. So, okay, and actually one thing that I wanted to mention is that if your nails are relatively flat, you want to add a little bit more gel on the nail, just a little bit, not fully structured. So again, not fully structured, so that the underneath of the full coverage tip gets filled. Okay, so again, we're going to grab our full coverage tip, paint approximately the amount of the length of the nail, like so, especially on the sidewalls, because I find like sometimes that gel doesn't make it there. And then apply a dollop for adhesion. It doesn't have to be a huge dollop, just a generous one, like so. Okay. Don't panic. That's my number one mistake. Panicking. Grab the tip. You can even release it right there. It'll stay. Guide it. Guide it, guide it. Turn on your lamp. And I can attest that this is a very powerful lamp. You will definitely feel a little heat, especially if your nails on the thinner side, like mine is. So just be really careful there. Make sure that you give yourself a break if you feel heat on the nail. So as you can see, this full coverage tip is already kind of protecting, working as that brace that we wanted this to work as. Now, if you have any little gap underneath there between the tip and the nail, you will have to add a little bit of gel so that things don't get stuck there. But otherwise, that's it. You will file this into shape and overlay it very slightly with the gel lip balm. Last thing there is to do is to overlay the nail, and I'm going to do so with the NTB clear only because I like the brush a little bit better for overlay. For adhering the gel lip, it wasn't a big deal to me, but for this I do like, for overlaying, I do like the brush a little better. Okay, then amount and shimmy all the way up to the cuticle area. Bring it down. And it's only a thin overlay. So after this, I'm just going to add the thinnest amount to this wet layer. And that's going to be it as far as overlaying. Just let it self-level, and that is it. Those tiny bubbles inside the nail don't concern me. They're not big, and I don't expect them to develop to bigger bubbles. Okay, when you're ready, cure. And That's how you would turn that ugly nail into a beautiful protected nail. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, would you do me a favor and give it a thumbs up to boost it up in the algorithm so that I may help more people. And if you need a little more direction in your nail journey, we're currently open for enrollment into the Roadmap course, which is a course with all of the steps to becoming and achieving success as an independent nail tech. And if you want to learn my full professional method of applying gel nails using soft gel only, check out my Master Gel Nails course, where I'll take you step by step into my exact salon application method for monthly wearing gel nails. Both courses are now open for enrollment. Learn more about them and other resources mentioned in this video in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to continue growing with me. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.